Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Elliot Loney Podcast. Today I was joined by Australia's #1 tennis player, former world number 18, and a man who needs no introduction, Alex de Minaur. Now, this man is as genuine as they come. He is an absolute legend of a fella, and you're going to find out in this podcast why everybody loves him. I mean, look, he talks about his early days in tennis, where he's at now with his career, and his plans moving forward. I'm very excited to share this podcast with you, so without any further ado, let's get stuck into it.
I might need to do some push-ups or something, do a few bicep curls. Andy Craig.
The stretch is going.
Oh, Demon, mate, welcome to the Elliot Loney Podcast. It's great to have you here. I've been looking forward to chatting to you for a long time. How's things going, mate? How's isolation been for you? And you're in Spain at the moment?
Yes, I am. But first of all, the pleasure is all mine. And, you know, I'm here in Spain at the moment. We have gotten past the toughest part of this whole lockdown, and now we've got a little bit more of a life where we're able to meet up with friends in groups up to 10 people. So it's looking a little bit more like reality, you know, back to the normality we're kind of used to. So that's all right.
That's good. And you were mentioning before we press record on this podcast that you've got a new addition to the Demon family. You've got a new dog. I've
got a new dog, a new puppy. He's 8 weeks old, and at the moment he's tough to deal with. I don't think I've ever cleaned so many feces in my life.
Yeah, well, that's what dogs do. But
yeah,
interesting. I'd love to see who's quicker in a race. I mean, I'm sure he'd be pretty quick, but maybe you could race him and see.
He's still pretty young, but I reckon he's going to get me real soon.
I'm not so sure about that, but we'll touch on that later on. Well, I'm very excited to speak to you, Demon. I've got a lot of questions here. I'm looking at the list here, and there's so much stuff I want to say to you. But I guess let's start with the early days for you. How did you find tennis, and how old were you when you first started playing? Talk us through your junior days.
All right, so my first encounter with the sport was when I was 4 years old. My parents signed me up to a tennis lesson, just as well as I was playing soccer and other sports, just to see if there was anything I liked to do. And from then on, you know, tennis was always a sport that I really enjoyed, and I sort of found a love for very early days, and you know, we just stuck with that and you know, just tried to progress as much as I could.
Yeah, because you were born in Sydney, but I think you were born in Sydney, and then when you were 5, you moved to Spain, and you were 13, you moved back to Australia. Is that right?
Exactly right. So I was born in Australia, and then when I was 4 years old, I touched my first tennis racket in Sydney, actually. I got signed up to a tennis lesson there in Sydney in Cars Park Tennis Club, you know, just around the corner where I used to live. And we continued that for like a year until we had to move back. And then we sort of kept at it back in Spain, and, you know, kind of grew more and more a fan of the sport and just tried to play as much as I could, basically.
Yeah, because when I first met you, I noticed you had a bit of an accent, and it was when you first came on the scene. I didn't actually realise that you spent so much time in Spain, but that explains it, obviously. So you're fluent in both languages, which must be handy when you're out on the circuit.
Yeah, well, obviously my mum is Spanish. My dad's from Uruguay. I've spent almost more than half of my life in Spain because of sort of different situations, but yeah, it's extremely handy. Obviously, languages is a huge part to be able to communicate and interact with all the different players. And you know, I'm fortunate enough that, you know, I've got great friends who are Spanish on tour, as well as, you know, obviously my Aussie mates.
And you've got quite a big family too, two brothers and 3 sisters, is that right? So
I've got I've got one brother 2 sisters,
Oh,
one
right.
half brother, one half sister.
Oh, right. There you go.
So it's a very big extended family, but we have, there's very good vibes between us all. We always try to meet up. We're in different parts of the world, so it's tougher to see each other. But whenever we have a chance, they'll either come to watch the tournament here or there. So we always catch up.
Did your siblings play tennis as well, or were you the?
They all do. They don't compete. They sort of play more socially. They like to train and go out there and have fun. So it's good. At least they're getting out there and playing some sport.
Well, one of the questions I've got for you here is because you have spent so much time in Spain and you've spent so much time in Australia, I think one of the things I'm most interested to ask you is you're uniquely placed to comment on Spanish tennis and Australian tennis. And I think statistically, when I look at the stats, Spain has produced so many fantastic players through the juniors. And if they're going off just top 100 rankings by country, Spain is usually either 1 or 2 on that list, which is, always so elite. So what's some of the things you've observed in Spanish developmental tennis and Aussie developmental tennis? What are some of the major differences there?
I think one of the biggest things I've felt and I've seen is the level of competition. I think it's not only Spain, but also Europe is much more grueling, especially, in early stages. You have basically tournaments every weekend, and you're out here like watching 8-year-olds play or 9 or 10 or 12-year-olds, and they're literally just leaving their heart out on court. They're out here. If they have to play 75 moon balls to win a point, they're going to do that. So they have that sort of competitive, I think, edge, I would say. And I felt like, when I was in Australia, it was really good when you're, in the country and you're playing a lot of competition between each other. But what you lack a little bit is the competition from abroad. And that's why I think whenever we went as a group to Europe to play some tournaments, play, I don't know, a month's worth or 2 months worth of tournaments, we kind of, every time we went there, it's not like we always had the best results. It was sort of like damn, like these kids are a little bit on top of us. So, it's a little bit of, it's something that you've got to work with. You got to try, I think, to travel as much as you can to Europe and try to get that sort of competition level, that sort of learn how to win matches any way, even if you're not playing well. And I mean, I was fortunate enough to have the best of both worlds, so I was able to kind of learn a couple of things here and there.
Yeah, because you did say, obviously, earlier, 4 years old, you first picked up your racket in Sydney. When you did move over to Spain, did that motivate you to lift your level because you did see there were so many more people playing at that time? And obviously, like you said, the competitive nature and being in Europe, and tennis is so big over in Europe as well. Did that inspire you to instill that work ethic that obviously everyone knows you have?
Well, I must say, since I started competing, or since I first started competing, that's when I really sort of fell in love with the game. I mean, that was what I liked the most about it. Just going out to battle and basically having one person in front of you, and you basically just got to be better than them or get through them. So that aspect of the game was the one that always, got me going and was what I look forward to the most. But I would say probably when we moved to Australia again and I was 12 years old, that was probably the defining moment where I said, we had to make a big decision whether I would go into school or do distance education and sort of play tennis full time. And I reckon when we decided to go full time, I was like, you know what, this is the moment right now. From now on, I've got to make sure I do everything in my power to try to make it, because I've made such a big decision, which is, you know, not going to school and studying distance ed. It's like, you know, it's now or never.
Mm. And obviously maturity beyond your years, because obviously, as you said, at 12 years old, that's a massive decision to make, and it's obviously paid dividends for you, but very courageous of you, and I think very mature of you to make that decision.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it had to do as well with I could see sort of the sacrifice that my parents had done. So I kind of felt obliged that, you know, it's such a big decision. Well, you know, I might as well just leave it all out there, whether it works or whether it doesn't. But at least I know that, you know, I gave it my best shot.
Bloody hell, mate, you're making me proud to be Australian. Bloody hell.
I appreciate it.
I've got tears in my eyes. You've had an amazing junior career, reaching world number 2 in the world juniors. You made a Wimbledon final in 2016. Was there a moment where you were ripping backy winners and painting lines with your forehand where you were just like, man, I'm a fair prodigy, eh? Like, I'm gonna make waves on the ATP tour.
Oh, honestly, I reckon, even though, you know, in juniors I had some good results, I knew that, you know, especially in the past, there's been so many unbelievable juniors that then, you know, have kind of disappeared. So even though I was maybe, you know, focusing on the juniors and enjoying it a lot, I knew that it really didn't mean a lot. It basically meant nothing, because the real sort of step was up on the ATP tour, you know, trying to get to where I wanted to be. And probably the moment where I was like, geez, did that really happen, was probably Brisbane, that Australian summer where I got a wild card into main draw of Brisbane, and I had a run in Brisbane. I lost in the semi-finals to Harrison, and then the following week in Sydney, I made the final. That was probably the moment where I was like, damn, I'm actually there, you know. Yeah. I'm competing with these guys, you know. I've got the level. Now it's all about just maintaining that.
Yeah, that's amazing that you're able to pinpoint it as well, because I was curious to figure out, because I often wonder, I'm like, the players really know the moment.
You go out there and you're competing and you're going, because obviously it's a slow grind, you know. You play the futures, you grind through them, you play the challenges, you grind through them. Then you got to get to a point where you can play ATP events. I was obviously very lucky to have Tennis Australia give me a wild card into those events, and then just the confidence that you get from that was like, well, because even though at that time probably my ranking was probably still around like 200s or something like that. I think I started the year about 240. But with those results, I knew that I had that level. So it gave me a huge confidence boost, and I was like, okay, well, you know, I just got to bring that level and keep trying to beat these guys and keep trying to go deep in weeks. And I ended up having, I would probably say, my best year on tour.
We've got a far better attitude than me. I tell you what, I snapped a fair few sticks in my junior career, and if I was too locked down,
mate. Hey, it happens to all of us. I've actually snapped a couple as well. You know, it happens. You know what? I've got a pretty cool story. So I'm talking maybe when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. There were moments. I was usually pretty good, but there were moments, obviously, like every human being, where I wasn't very happy with how I was playing. So I would throw the racket a couple of times and this and that. And it got to a point where my mum actually dragged me off the court in one match. And I said, you're not playing anymore. So from that moment, you know, my mum has been very good with teaching me early days, basically, not to suck or to have a bad attitude on court. So I've tried to remain on that line, but you know, it's a very stressful game. You know, sometimes you can't help it.
Well, I think you've done a fantastic job. It's interesting you say that because I remember Roger Federer said a similar story because
exactly, yeah.
With Roger, the way he behaves on court now, he's exemplary. But I know that he had a similar experience with his.
Exactly. When he was a junior, at least what I've heard, he used to be one of the worst guys out there. You know, he used to break a lot of rackets, have a lot of tantrums, and obviously someone let him know that wasn't on, and look at him now.
So, ladies and gentlemen, parents with young juniors, if you want your kids to be exemplary tennis gentlemen like Alex de Minaur, give them a little bit of discipline on the court, and it should obviously pay dividends in the end.
Exactly. Teach them young, that's for sure.
That's it. Now, we've talked about your junior career. Let's talk about some of your career-defining moments. I've got some amazing stuff from your rap sheet here, and it's, you know, you've only had a short career so far. You've got so far to go, but some of the things you've done already, you've reached a career high of 18 in the world. You've reached the 4th round of the US Open just in 2019. You've reached 3rd round of Aussie Open and Wimbledon 2, taken out 3 ATP titles, represented Australia multiple times, had wins over top 10 players. And of course, this is just to name a few things. What is your favourite thing from your career so far?
Well, it's an interesting one, that question, because I would probably have to say that my proudest moment was probably when I was able to make my debut in Davis Cup. So that was, for me, one of the moments where I was like, you know, pinching myself kind of moment, where I was like, geez, I've actually, you know, made it to the team, and I've been able to represent my country. And obviously I had a tough loss to Zverev in 7-6 in the 5th in my debut. But I tell you what, it was one of the best feelings out there to be able to know that I was good enough to represent my country. But another moment, I would have to say, probably winning my first title, especially in Sydney, in my hometown, because that was not only was it obviously an unbelievable feeling for getting the win, but just the relief from all the pressure, the expectation, all the media talk, all the lead-in, because the year before I had made the final, so everyone was kind of expecting me to go all the way, and to finally have it, you know, happen and be able to kind of forget about it and relax and enjoy the moment was definitely up there as well.
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up so early on, because that actually brings me to my second question, which I had here, which is, you know, you do wear the green and gold with such pride. And like I said before, you make me proud to be Australian. I love watching you play because, you know, no matter what the conditions, no matter where you are, you leave it all out there on the court. And it's mesmerising to watch because you just give 110%. So where does that patriotic nature in you come from?
Yeah, well, it's something that you know, there's probably two parts of this story, I would say. So the first part, I would say, is just growing up and watching these guys play, watching Davis Cup ties, watching Lleyton leave it all out there on court, watching just the greats and the ties, the importance of the ties. My dad actually letting me know sort of his experiences watching ties at White City. So all of this is obviously a huge part which I wanted to be a part of. And also the fact that when we moved to Australia when I was 12, and we really needed a lot of help from whoever I could, and Tennis Australia was out there, and gave me all the facilities in the world, helped me out immensely. And basically when I really needed the help, they were there. So, I've also got that part of sort of loyalty to say, I'm going to leave it all out there every time I can and try to represent the green and gold in the best possible way I can. So it's a bit of those two things, I would say.
It's a fantastic answer, and it's great to hear, because it's been one of my dreams as well to play Davis Cup for Australia, but unfortunately I only reached the dizzying heights of Dizzy Cup.
Mate, you never know. There's still time. Just get out there. Just put in the hours, and you never know.
I'll happily be the mascot, mate. You can wrap me up in a flag, and I'll pull some ridiculous faces on the sidelines.
We got to make that happen. At least, come on.
that could be my role. You've been described as maybe the quickest player on the ATP tour a lot. So, what are some of the exercises and stuff you do on the track to get that elite speed, or have you just been born with it?
Yeah, it's actually, as a junior, I was always pretty clumsy. Like, I had very big feet, and sort of my body hadn't really grown into, I hadn't grown into my body. So I used to have to find ways to win matches, and a lot of that was trying to read where my opponent was playing and try to anticipate a little bit more. But then slowly I started to grow into my body, and the speed kind of came along. But I would probably say that I don't do a lot of stuff in the gym. Like, I'll do probably a lot more stuff just with body weight exercises. I'll do a lot of running. I'll try to have, difference. I'll do some mountain sort of hill sprints. I'll do some long distance running. I'll do some change of paces as well. So it's just about trying to work every single area, and then, I don't know, attitude of trying to reach every ball you can. That's always helped me as well. So I think it's a little bit of all these things together, I would say.
Yeah, well, I'll have to start doing some hill sprints, because obviously... Mate,
it's the way to go. I'm telling you.
I've put on a bit of mud in isolation, so it's good to hear.
Hey.
You've had a great relationship with one of my idols growing up, Lleyton Hewitt. I've seen him courtside supporting you through the years. What's one thing you know about Lleyton that no one else does?
What's one thing I know about Lleyton that no one else
does? You don't have to answer that if you don't want, because
let's just say that the way he's on the court, he's with everything in life. Like, he's one of the most competitive people. Yeah, probably the most competitive person I know. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're out there on the tennis court, obviously, if you're out there on the golf course, you could be playing bloody marbles, and he'll be the most competitive person on court. So it's something that I found it very interesting to see that his attitude sort of on court also was off the court, but it's he's obviously been a great help to me and has been an amazing mentor, and really has helped me out a lot. So I'm forever grateful.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because he was definitely one of my idols growing up. I had a big poster of him on my wall, and I met him actually a couple of times, I think, through you and Thanasi and Kiggs and stuff. And I think the first couple of times I met him, I was completely starstruck. So
yeah,
it's good to hear that he's got that sort of nature off the court as well. It's exactly how I would have imagined.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It almost is what you kind of expected, but yeah, well, he's like that.
You've got a lot of weapons on court. Your speed, your movement, your ball striking, return to serve. But I think one of the things I'm really I guess I really admire in your game is your mental toughness. And in my own humble opinion, I think it's the difference between a good player and a great one. Is there something that you tell yourself when the chips are down to unleash that inner demon in you? Or is it just, is that top secret information?
Well, no, not really. I'm very comfortable talking about this. I've been working with a sports psych for about 3 years now. So I've put in a lot of work with him. I mean, it's not sort of a whole sort of sunshine and roses, basically. It's because you go through some very tough patches in tennis. It's a very lonely sport, which, your attitude really is defined a lot by how you're playing, if you're winning, if you're not. So, you've got to put a lot of work in. I think, as you said, probably I would say the difference in tennis level between, top 100 and, 400 onwards, 500, everyone, I would say, has very, very similar level. But a lot of it is just mentally, to just believe in yourself. Also, I try to make sure every time I step out on court, I give this image of myself. Even if I'm not playing my best tennis, at least I'm showing everyone that, I'm that guy that's going to leave it all out there. If I don't play well, I'm still going to fight until the end. I might have my good days and my bad days, but you're going to have to beat me.
It's an admirable quality, because I when I was doing my research, I saw in an interview that you said you've been reading 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson's book. And I think the first chapter...
I started in quarantine. I was like, I might as well read something. And it was actually very interesting stuff.
Yeah, well, I think the first chapter is stand up straight with your shoulders back. And that's
exactly
something that you always do, even when the chips are down. And I think oftentimes I've observed in your matches, you're exactly right. You always... if you watch one of your matches and the score wasn't on the screen, you wouldn't be able to tell whether you were winning or losing. You still have that positive energy, and I think that's that's a sign of an elite player.
Well, that's the plan, at least. It doesn't always happen, but I try to bring that every time I step on court.
Good answer, Demon. Couple of little light ones here. Best city you've ever visited.
Best city I've ever visited.
Or country or city, if you can't know.
Okay. Well, I'm probably going to have to go on tournament, because I don't do a lot of sightseeing. So I'm going to say, for the kind of wow factor, I'm probably going to have to say New York.
Amazing city.
It's something you have to do. It's sort of the wow factor of just being in Manhattan, seeing all the skyscrapers and being in the middle of everything. I would probably say that. And based on just the place, I'm probably going to have to say Acapulco. You're in a resort. You got views to the beach. It's all in the same hotel, and it's actually very beautiful. But I haven't been to the city there. You're sort of told to stay in the hotel. So
it's funny you mention Acapulco, because Thanasi often tells me that's probably one of his favourite tournaments as well. He loves that place. So I've heard a lot of players.
It's a very nice place. It's very easy. Obviously, the atmosphere is great, and it's a lot of the players do love it.
Who is the toughest opponent you've ever faced?
Toughest. I'm probably going to have to say Medvedev.
Yeah, interesting. A few players have told me that as well.
Yeah, my first encounter, I kind of felt like I I was just set up, and it felt like I was in control, and that kind of slipped away. And then it's always been a battle. It's basically you got to be prepared to just have a long match and be prepared to go with him every single point. So you got to be in the right mentality to go out there on court with him.
Yeah, he's a fair weapon. I've watched.
He's a very tricky player.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like I wouldn't want to face him. I know that you've obviously faced Rafa and Roger as well. Obviously, a couple of guys who are considered to be arguably the greatest of all time. So when you were playing those guys, is there anything that you observed in their games that you thought, I'd love to implement this in my own game?
With I'll say with Roger, when I played him, I felt like it was just amazing how good his first ball after the serve was. It felt like, even though I was returning, because his serve isn't obviously what it used to be. It's, it hits the areas, good spots, but it's not a serve that you feel like you can't return. So I feel like I was returning a lot of serves in a fairly deep manner, and it honestly felt like he had a short ball every single time.
Wow,
the way he moved around the forehand and just dictated from that very first ball, I was like, a lot of times I was talking to my coach, I was like, I've literally got to either go for a winner on the return or hit a return literally 30 centimeters from the baseline. Because if not, it was almost point over. So that's probably one of the things that just hit me straight away whilst I was playing. And then with Rafa, I mean, just the intensity. Like the presence as well that he has on court. That's pretty amazing, I've got to say.
Well, they are two people I would definitely not like to face. So
exactly, they're tough.
It gives me nightmares just listening to you talk about it. If you could go back and replay any match in your career, is there a match that springs to mind?
There's a couple. I'm probably going to have to go with Davis Cup debut. I was 3-love up in the fifth, had double break point to go up 4-love, and that match kind of just slipped away. That one was one that it took me a while to process, but I would probably say that one.
Yeah, interesting. I still remember under 14s TCAV championships. I had a smash on top of the net against a guy.
Hit me.
I had a smash on top of the net against a guy who was he was a good player. He was one of the best in Australian juniors. And I had a smash on top of the net, trophy position, match point. I shanked it over the fence, lost the next 2 points, snapped my rackets and left.
That's tough. That's a tough turn of events, I must say.
Yeah, it wasn't.
But trust me, I've got that shot down pat as well. The good old sitter smash, shanked onto the parking lot. I've got that one. Don't you worry. It happened to everyone.
We've talked about your career, where you're at now. I don't want to waste too much of your time because I know you're a busy man.
No worries at all, mate.
What are some of your goals and aspirations moving forward in your career?
Well, obviously, you've always got that hunger to keep on climbing up the rankings. I don't like to focus too much on numbers, and I try to take it more sort of day by day kind of thing. But I do feel like my level is at a point where I can really take it to these top guys. So I really want to be, going deep in tournaments, try to go deep in slams. I think that's the biggest thing. And just try to, be one of those players that every single week, I'm putting up a good result.
Now here's a tricky one for you, Demon. I asked Kyrgios and Kokkinakis a very similar question, so I'm interested to see what you think about this.
Okay, hit me.
I got to throw this in the mix. if a fully formed Elliot Loney came up against a 13-year-old Alex de Minaur on a clay court, Alicante, Spain, windy conditions, cold day, fluffy balls, northerly breeze across the court, who would come out on top in a best-of-3 match decided by a super tiebreaker?
Mate, I don't even have to think about that one. It will be so clearly you. I've seen you hit balls, mate. You would snip me like
No, come on, mate.
probably
No
1-1.
No
One and
way.
one. I might hit a couple drop shots that you wouldn't get to, but apart from that, mate, your kicker would be bouncing over my head, and mate, it wouldn't be a contest. I mean, come on now.
Not. I mean, you've got that.
If you give me 15, 16, I would say maybe it would be a tough
you
match.
shot me, mate. You shot me.
Come on now.
You were surely grinding on the courts of Sanchez Casal as a mere 12-year-old.
I was grinding, all right. I was probably hitting about 50 drop shots per match. That was my style of play. But mate, I was like that. You know, I was very small. I barely had any power, so I struggled a lot against guys that were even 2 years older than me. You know, just a little bit stronger in this. I struggled big time, so I kind of had to learn a way to play against these guys. But mate, no chance I've got to 1-1.
A little bit off topic. Definitely not, but a little bit off topic. But I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago now, we did it was like a Melbourne Park. I can't remember what it was, some sort of event. And it might have been a media event or something, but I was on the court with you. And I just will never forget, because I'd never hit with you before. And I think I hit a short ball and I could not believe how quickly you got to the ball. I actually couldn't believe it. It was almost like I hadn't even thought about hitting a drop shot or a short ball. It hadn't even crossed my mind, and you were already in the spot, ready to slap it for a winner.
20-year-old me, baby. It's got nothing on 13-year-old me, that's for sure.
Oh man, I'm sure you're going to be doing hill sprints with that new dog of yours, and you'll be even faster.
He better keep up. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess I got nothing else to say, Damon. I just wanted to say thanks so much for coming on, man. I know you've got an extremely bright future. I love the way you play. You make us all very proud to be Australian, and I'm wishing all the best in your career moving forward, mate. I know you'll do great things.
Mate, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure, as always, and you know you've got me for whenever you want.
Oh, mate, it's... my heart is melting, mate.
Hey, don't get all emotional on me now.
Brother, you're a legend. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for watching and listening, guys. I just wanted to say thank you for supporting the channel. We've seen a lot of growth over the last few weeks. I'm really excited to keep making new content and new podcasts for you guys. Don't forget to click the bell and subscribe if you haven't already. I've got some huge guests lined up in the podcast with some great gags, which I think you'll find absolutely hilarious on the horizon. Thank you so much for your continued support, and I'll see you very soon.